Howdy folks, I'm Hank Sheffer, and welcome to another true life story right here with Larry Hedrick on Mysteries of the Superstition Mountains.
You know, it's said by people who should know that there's as many as 2,400 Indian ruins in and around Superstition Mountain. Of course, it takes a trained eye to be able to look at a pile of rubble and say it was an Indian ruin, but there's at least 140 major ruins in the Superstitions. Most of these were put together by the Hohokam or the Salado Indians. The Hohokam came into the Arizona picture about 300 AD, and the Salados came in about 800 AD. The Salados were cliff dwellers, but the Hohokam were desert people, and they built their houses mostly in flatland. We have a picture here of a typical pit house that the early pioneer phase of Hohokam. But as the different phases came along, they covered them in mud. And one of the tricks that they did is they would wet their hands and rub that clay until it shone real bright. And this, of course, made it impervious to rain. But they both left examples of their construction ability in that the Hohokam down at the Casa Grande ruins at Coolidge, and over at the Salado, over at the Tonto National Cliff Dwellings, where the Salado had major ruins there. And the Tonto ruins has a very nice interpretive center where you can go in and you can see the difference between the Salado pottery, and in other places you can see the Hohokam pottery. The Hohokam is distinctly different than any other types of pottery. These two ruins draw annually about 30 to 35,000 people. But in the Superstitions, there's some pristine ruins, particularly over in Rogers Canyon at Angel Springs, where we have the cliff dwellings by the Salado that are just absolutely perfect. Some minor damage by past hikers, but you can actually see the fingerprints of the Indians as they put the mud on the sides of the walls. Probably a couple of thousand people have been in to see these ruins at Angel Springs, but there's some very inaccessible canyons in the Superstitions, and there are several ruins that are in absolutely perfect condition. The Hohokam occupied significant portions of the extreme western and southern sides of the Superstition Mountains. Hohokam pottery shards have been found throughout the entire Goldfield Mining District, Gold Canyon, and the Queen Valley regions. The Hohokam did not venture deeply into the wilderness areas in significant numbers, the exception being in the collapsed caldera of Garden Valley. A cursory investigation of Garden Valley occurred in 1931. A large farming area, ringed by the perimeter of small, formerly occupied caves, was found. Unfortunately, no record exists that would pin down the exact date of the occupation. But there is an amazing mystery ruin in the Superstitions. It's going by the name of Circlestone these days. And really, I have to give credit to Tom Collenborn for the exploration that took place. Tom was working summers at the Tex Barkley Quarter Circle U Ranch while he was still in high school in 1955. And he went to work full-time for Tex after he got out of high school. And the first time he heard about the ruins was in 1955. I heard about it the first time from Tom in 1975. So in 1966, him and a couple other guys actually drove down to Rivas Ranch because there used to be a road there, and it was private property at that time. And this was the first time they were actually able to locate the ruins, although they weren't able to really do any exploration there. And then in 1975, Tom had an aerial view with a friend who had an airplane, and they flew over it. And in 1976, he took 8 people up there and took a bunch of measurements. And About 1980, he had KPNX in Phoenix do a documentary on Circlestone. And in 1981, he done 2 trips in there, and this was the first time that he actually took a geologist with him and an archaeologist with him. You might remember the story I told about Tom having me take a couple of strings of horses up to the JF Ranch. This was the trip that he took the 8 people on. We took 11 head up there, and I was supposed to go on that, but I was working with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office at that time, and I was unable to go. And I might add here, this is one of the few places that I've never made it to, Circlestone. The old cowboys always thought that this was a corral. As time went by, the others thought it was an abandoned village, and others thought it was a fortress, and others thought it was a place the Indians put together for religious ceremonies. But when they took the archaeologist up there, in fact, there's been a couple of them up there, and they were throwing out figures that this might be as old as 2,000 years. And most of them thought that it was a celestial observatory. Anyway, the spokes that are inside the Circlestone are aligned with the summer and winter solstice, and the whole thing is aligned with Polaris, the North Star. I have to give a lot of credit here to Tom, because he's done more than anybody else to bring the world to attention of Circlestone. And although we may never know who built it for sure, there was a very small amount of pottery found at the scene. Some of it was Salado, some of it was Hohokam, but none of this proved that they were the ones that built it. I have not seen any of the pieces from there, but it would have been easy for me to believe that any archaeologist could have told what phase of Hohokam pottery it was, but I found no evidence that suggested anything like that. But that they actually operated out of there for short periods of time is highly probable. And then, of course, the Apache began to come into Arizona in the 1300s. And it was the Apache that the raids on the Salado and the Hohokam and the Superstitions and close to the Superstitions that drove them back into the valley. And the Apaches finally took over the whole area. So Circlestone's just going to have to remain, for the time being, another mystery of the Superstition Mountains.
Thank you for watching this episode of Mysteries of the Superstition Mountains.